On December 7 of 1993, 18-year-old Rose Larner vanished without a trace. She was last seen on the south side of Lansing, Michigan at the home of her childhood friend, Bill Brown. From the beginning of their investigation, police suspected that Bill Brown was responsible for Rose Larner's disappearance. After taking a closer look at Bill Brown, detectives quickly learned that Brown and his three brothers were connected to the city's criminal underworld.
They needed to know if Brown was telling the truth.
He'd been involved in the drug scene, that he ran with this group that would fight. Violence was a part of their world. He ran with a rough crowd.
Suspecting that Bill Brown was responsible for Ms. Larner's disappearance, detectives focused their investigation on Brown and anyone connected to his family's illegal drug operation.
We as a task force put a lot of pressure on Bill Brown. I mean, we were talking to family members, we were talking to friends, we were talking to neighbors, we were talking to all kinds of people who had been approached before.
Bill Brown repeatedly told detectives that he had nothing to do with Ms. Larner's disappearance, and on more than one occasion. He pointed the finger at men who Brown knew were completely innocent.
That night many nights after, that's about all the thought I put into it. All the other thought was in saving my butt.
Fearing he would soon be charged for the murder of Ms. Larner, Bill Brown struck a deal with the prosecution to save himself. Brown claimed that John Ortiz Keogh was responsible to Ms. Larner's death. Instead of following the evidence, the prosecution built their case around Bill Brown's story. Brown is the only eyewitness to his version of events. According to the testimony of Bill Brown, on December 7, 1993, he, John and a female friend named Shelley Wood, drove from Lansing to Grand Rapids, in Tim Kehoe's truck. The trio consumed marijuana and cocaine while they drove, and Brown admitted that he was hoping to have sex with Ms. Wood. However, when Ms. Wood refused to have sex with Bill Brown, Brown wanted to be taken home. At around 2 or 3 a.m., John and Ms. Wood dropped Bill Brown off at his parents' home in Lansing. When they arrived at the house, Rose Larner was standing on the front porch. Ms. Larner was furious and she began screaming profanities once she realized that John was in the truck with another woman. Ms. Larner called John a whore and threatened to assault Ms. Wood. John responded by driving away. Once John left, Ms. Larner begged Bill Brown to page John and convince him to come back and have sex with her. Brown told Ms. Larner he would only convince John to return if she would have sex with him too. According to Bill Brown, Ms. Larner reluctantly agreed to his proposal. Brown contacted John and persuaded him to return. The trio then drove to a secluded country road, where they parked the truck and John had sex with Ms. Larner. Brown testified that he wanted to participate and he attempted to fondle Ms. Larner's breast. Brown admitted that Ms. Larner ultimately bit him on the leg. According to Bill Brown, after John and Ms. Larner finished having sex, they drove to a Myers store in Grand Rapids. Brown claimed that John entered the store alone and came out with a bag of what he assumed were things for the night festives. Brown said the trio drove to John's grandparents' home in Albion. Upon entering the house, the three found a bedroom, where they consumed more cocaine and marijuana. Brown said that it didn't take long before John and Ms. Larner were having sex again. Brown admitted that he masturbated and watched. Brown also claimed that Ms. Larner was willing to have sex with him as well. However, Brown said he was unable to perform. According to Bill Brown, John and Ms. Larner eventually decided to shower together. Despite insisting that he never had sex with Ms. Larner, Bill Brown said he needed a shower too. Brown stated that he joined John and Ms. Larner in the shower. While they are showering, Bill Brown claimed that John left the bathroom and returned with a knife. Brown said that John tried to hand him the knife but he refused to take it. So John placed the knife on a ledge inside of the shower. After the trio finished showering, Brown said that John wrapped an electrical cord around Ms. Larner's neck and tightened the cord until she was unconscious. Bill Brown then lost track of his own story, and said that John once again left the bathroom to retrieve the knife, and used it to cut off Ms. Larner's throat. When asked how the knife got moved from off the shower's ledge, Brown said he didn't know. Bill Brown told the jury that John was covered with blood, bond, and flesh. Stuff was everywhere, Brown said. But when crime scene investigators searched the bathroom for evidence to support Brown's allegations, no blood, bone, hair, or flesh was found. Not a single speck of trace evidence corroborating Bill Brown's story could be located inside of the shower or bathroom. The men built a bonfire and placed Ms. Larner's body in the flames. Brown said he diligently poured gas on the fire until only ashes remained. However, before the fire completely consumed Ms. Larner's body, Bill Brown claimed that John cut off a bit of charred meat and ate one bite before spitting it out. Brown also claimed that John pocketed a piece of bone before the men left the property. Bill Brown also claimed that John burned Ms. Larner's head, hands, and feet in the home's basement fireplace. Yet, crime scene investigators were unable to find any evidence to support Bill Brown's story. Brown said he wanted to cremate Ms. Larner's entire body and he wanted to do it at his parents' property in northern Michigan. The two men loaded Ms. Larner's body into a car, along with an axe, shovels and 2 gas cans. And they drove to the Brown family's Island Lake property in Gladwyns County. The men then drove to Big Rapids, where John's brother lived with several roommates. According to Bill Brown, John and his brother's roommates used the bone as a cigarette holder for the marijuana-filled cigars they smoked. Shockingly, the prosecution refused to call any of the roommates as witnesses to verify Brown's story. Ultimately, Bill Brown concluded his testimony by admitting that he lied to the police many times because he did not want to be charged with murder. Brown also admitted that his friends and family created alibis for him at his request. The case against John rested solely on the testimony of Bill Brown. There was no body to autopsy in order to prove a cause of death, a weapon was never recovered, and an exact motive was not presented by the prosecution for why John would kill Ms. Larner. John, on the other hand, provided the only reasonable explanation for what happened to Ms. Larner. He also admitted that he asserted his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent and did not cooperate with the police out of fear of retaliation from the Brown family. John agreed with most of what Bill Brown said happened on that fateful night. John testified that Bill Brown was upset when Shelley Wood refused to have sex with him. John also confirmed that Bill Brown repeatedly tried to have sex with Ms. Larner and she refused his advances throughout the night. However, John's testimony of what actually happened to Ms. Larner differed greatly from Bill Brown's story. John told the jury that Bill Brown was extremely high on cocaine, marijuana, and alcohol. And Brown was frustrated because Ms. Larner's did not follow through with her promise to have sex with him too. To get what he wanted, Bill Brown waited for John to leave. When John returned, Ms. Larner was dead. The prosecution called John a liar, and said that he couldn't be trusted because he asserted his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, and he refused to cooperate with the police when they wanted to prosecute Bill Brown for murder.
John Kehoe was going to point the finger at him and say, well, gee, I didn't do it, I was just there, and he killed my girlfriend. He went nuts on coke and killed my girlfriend. We knew that was coming.
The prosecution made this claim, even though they offered John a plea deal, if he would agree to testify against Bill Brown. Furthermore, the prosecution admitted that they never solved the case.
The persistent rumors, roses in so-and-so's backyard, roses in so-and-so's basement. And I'll admit, we dug up a few basements and drained a few gravel pits looking for rose, with nothing. Came up dry every time, nothing.
You're simply stymied, you're stalled. That was where the police were at the time. 2.5 years after she disappeared.
Since the police could not find the physical evidence they needed to prove what happened to Ms. Larner, the police needed someone to talk.
I knew it was going to be very hard, very, very hard for them to be able to get a case. I knew the only way would be is if people started talking.
The prosecution built their entire case around Bill Brown's story, and since John's conviction, that case has completely unraveled.
Since his conviction, John Ortiz Kehoe has argued that a large portion of the evidence gathered by local and state police detectives was intentionally withheld during his trial. suppression of key evidence that prevented Mr. Ortiz-Kehoe from receiving a fair trial. Now, evidence of misconduct by one Lansing police detective has been unearthed. A document proving that not only did a Lansing police detective withhold evidence, he also committed perjury during Mr. Ortiz-Kehoe's trial in order to prevent the revelation of police reports that may have well exonerated Mr. Ortiz-Kehoe. During Mr. Ortiz-Kehoe's trial, Calhoun County Prosecutor John Kelsey questioned Lansing Police Detective Lucius Hayward about who he personally interviewed during his investigation into the disappearance of Rose Larner. Detective Hayward told the jury that he only interviewed 2 people during his investigation, John Ortiz-Kehoe and Billy Brown. Anyone else? Prosecutor Kelsey asked. That was the only 2 I interviewed, Detective Hayward testified. However, through a Freedom of Information Act request, an affidavit for a search warrant has been obtained that states Detective Hayward also interviewed Tim Ortiz-Kehoe, the brother of John Ortiz-Kehoe. It is an affidavit signed and sworn to by Lansing Police Detective Lucius Hayward himself. Irrefutable proof that not only did Detective Hayward commit perjury, he also withheld evidence that could have led to a drastically different outcome in the trial of John Ortiz-Kehoe, if only the jury had the opportunity to weigh all of the evidence gathered by detectives investigating the case. Discovery of Detective Hayward's buried affidavit supports John Ortiz-Kehoe's assertion that evidence is being withheld that may well lead to his exoneration. Who else did Detective Hayward interview? Are we truly supposed to believe that he only interviewed 2 people during a 2-year investigation? And what other lies did Detective Hayward tell to the jury? These and many more questions continue to be asked while John Ortiz-Kehoe sits in a Michigan state prison for a crime he has continually proclaimed he did not commit. Regardless of how you view the actions of Detective Hayward, one thing is certain: John Ortiz-Kehoe deserves a new trial, a fair trial, allowing a jury to weigh all of the evidence for and against him. If you believe John Ortiz-Kehoe deserves a fair trial, please contact the Calhoun County Prosecutor's Office and demand a new trial for John.
When the circumstances surrounding John's wrongful conviction came to light, the public's view of the case changed. Witnesses who were not allowed to speak at John's trial are now coming forward, and support for John's release continues to grow.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that I want to say, you know what I'm saying, because I want my cousin to be free, you know. I don't want him to spend the rest of his life in prison for something he didn't do, you know, and there's nothing in his background that would signify that, you know, I mean, there was nothing for him to gain, you know, out of that, you know what I mean? So
after meeting John, you know, I give him the benefit of the doubt, and I think everybody deserves a chance to be heard. And
I'm kind of a spiritual person. I've always, when I look into someone's eyes, I can feel the goodness or the badness, and I was around him many times, and I never really felt badness. I knew that I could trust him with my life. If we were in a boat and I fell out of it, I knew he was jumping in to save my life.
I think they ought to get John another trial, and maybe get the guy that really did it, but I think they need to set John free. The justice system is screwed up big time.
Been doing this, trying to do anything I can to help him, you know, because I've been there in his position. Not quite as bad, but I know the feeling, you know, and it's not fun and it's not easy. It's very hard.
Yeah, right. There's a lot of, I mean, I can almost guarantee you that everybody that knows him in our town here in Albion will tell you that actually he's the direct opposite of what he's been labeled, you know what I mean?
I'm looking forward to seeing him again, though, when he gets out. Once they grant him this retrial, they're going to have to grant him a retrial. They have no choice, because all the suppressed evidence that now is to the light, all the evidence that they withheld, he found it. He got it. We had private investigators. We've had other people that we spoke with that were coerced, that were given deals. I mean, we have all these people that signed affidavits telling the truth now, because they can't do nothing to us. I guess after seeing who he was and hearing his story, I guess I feel some kind of compassion and type of, just human obligation to help this person in need, not only because he's a great guy and, you know, I come to really like him and he's a great friend of mine, but just feeling what's right in my heart to do, hearing this man's story and him, you know, pleading basically for, you know, a chance to prove his innocence, you know, but the objects and obstacles in his way to do that, but just realizing within myself, you know, that the obstacles and different things that I've been through, you know, nothing's impossible, and if there's a will, there's a way, and so, you know, I've just been helping John's will become a way for him, you know, and to help carry out the things that he needs and that he wants in life to try to get some fulfillment out of it, you know, to get justice for himself, you know. So I just kind of feel like that obligation in my heart, you know.
I'm glad, I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for those people that have come forward telling the truth. I'm thankful for all the evidence that's now coming to the light. Like, I know there was 26 grand jury members questioned in this case, and I guess they only used like 9, and out of those 9, half of them were lying with the Bill Brown family, and the other half were fighting cases themselves that were getting deals, you know. But all the other, however many that was, what does that leave? 20-something that were, no, not even in the teens. However many that left, 17 or so people that spoke highly of him or basically could have helped his case, all was suppressed. All that evidence was suppressed. So with this man on his own case, you know, fighting for his life, he's smart enough to do it. He's smart enough to figure it out, and then getting a good attorney with all the evidence can see all the facts.
Oh no, I still love the guy. I always will.
And let him know that I love him and we're still fighting for him on the outside.
I don't know. I love John as a mother loves a son.
But other than that, that's about it. I mean, he's my #1 road dog for years, a lot of years of my life, and I'm thankful for him. Taught me a lot. I learned a lot. We did a lot together. We've been through some shit together, some unbelievable shit that you probably wouldn't even believe if I told you. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. All we want to do now is fight to give him a new retrial, and I think we're gonna get that. So I want to thank you again, Em, for helping us. You know, you're a very crucial part of this team. You make it happen. You do a lot for us on social media and all the editing and blogs and stuff you put out for them. I appreciate that. I know all my homies in our circle appreciate that. So I'll leave it with that for now.
I hope he gets out.
Even Bill Brown's older brother is now speaking out. Ms. Larner tragically lost her life. And while the man who is responsible for her death walks free, an innocent man has lost his freedom. Bill Brown got away with murder because he found a way to save himself.
That night and many nights after, that's about all the thought I put into it. All the other thought was in saving my butt.
How long will John remain in prison for a crime he did not commit? How long will justice be denied? And how long will you allow it to happen?